This is probably one of the most underestimated decks that ever graced the meta of Cardfight, Vanguard, Willdress. And after going through the builds and inspiration from the official channel, yeah, this deck is actually really disgusting. This video is sponsored by Phoenix Pharos Cards. If you need supplies of singles or splits for Cardfight Vanguard, especially the ones in the video, do check out Phoenix Pharos Cards today, and as a bonus, use the promo code MetaNerd to get an amazing 5% discount. And with that being said, let's get on with the video. Greetings YouTube, welcome back to the MetaNerd channel. I'm Marcus, bringing you another video for Cardfight Vanguard Willdress. In this video, we'll be going through my deck profile for the all new and powerful Greedon Masques. Now, Greedon has not been performing like really well as of now because he's not really that great. I mean, yeah, he is hitting for really huge numbers as well as the multi-Vanguard attacks. He's okay, but then again, he's pretty much counterable by, you know, the most common thing in Vanguard, which is defensive OT and PG. So he's not really doing that great, if I'm being honest. And, you know, with the whole increase the damage to 7, it's nice, but then again, it's not really that great. But with the introduction to the Masque, he's actually really great. And thanks to the existing support, he has earned the title of the King of Battledore. And of course, you will know what I mean by that once we go into the deck profile. I mean, to be honest, I underestimated this card ever since he came out. And of course, a episode of disgusting my opponents in local tourneys. Yeah. Let's just get on with the deck profile, and who knows, it might just open your eyes to how disgusting this deck is. So as for the overall deck list, this is basically how I currently run my Greedon deck. As you can see, there's like a lot of changes as opposed to the typical Greedon deck where you see like there's a lot of Bubetsu as well as Hiko, the one that basically binds himself from the soul and call himself from the soul, just to basically enables like a multi-attacking Greedon. But for this deck, you only focus on 4 attacks. And you might ask, how is that disgusting? Those 4 attacks that this deck can do are actually all Battledore. You have cards like Fuujo as well as the great one Gouman. You are basically Battledore as soon as your opponent reach grade 3. When you reach the late game, this deck is just stupid. This is how I run the deck. You guys can take a picture or, you know, use the code up above me to basically wheel from the JP backlog. But of course, this is the overview. And of course, do stick around because I do go into like the needy and greedy of this deck and, you know, some potential tips and tricks on how to use this deck. So let's take a look at what I'm running for each of them. First off, of course, is the triggers. For the triggers, we're gonna run like the 8 critical and 3 fronts. Maxing criticals here is really important because, as I said before, this deck is basically the king of Battledore. This deck is basically like the most disgusting Battledore decks out there in the existence of Cardfight Vanguard. So maximize the critical will basically forces the opponent to guard with 2 hands or more. Even if it throw down the PG, he's still gonna have to throw down an extra card, which means in total he's gonna discard a total of 3 cards. So yeah, unless of course Elementaria Sanctitude, then sure. Front triggers are really good since Greedon now is able to attack for 4 times thanks to the lower rearguard cost of, instead of putting 4 rearguards to the soul, he only puts 3 rearguards into the soul. That basically lets you have like a full rearguard attacking turn. So the front trigger actually makes sense, and you know, you for sure will want to play the effect front triggers, which is a 20k shield, which will then increase your survivability. Even without the 20k front, you are taking hits like no tomorrow. So yeah, with the front triggers, it's mostly for you to power up your front row, including Greedon himself, which basically will force the opponent to throw down even more hand if they do decide to guard that. But at least they're gonna have to throw 2 cards or more thanks to, you know, the Battledore skills. I initially run draw triggers instead of the front because it's based on the previous experience using the OG Greedon deck where, you know, you do need like specific key pieces to be in your hand for you to do like the whole multi-Greedon attack combo. But you basically run the risk of decking out because this deck actually filters like crazy. So I do recommend running fronts, but then again, draw is actually not too bad. For over trigger, I think the Dark States over trigger is the much preferred choice. But of course, if you want to have like a 5th attack with Battledore, then of course Walnut here is going to be really good, especially in the case where you do dry check another crit and you just basically give the restanding rearguard and the restand skill. I do prefer the Dark States OT because your Vanguard does restand, so Greedon Masques will take full advantage of the 10k and a crit until the end of the fight instead of like one rearguard to restand. I mean, for sure you will have a rearguard to restand. It's just that the value isn't really comparable to the Dark State. But of course, feel free to use Walnut. I'm not stopping you. For the Rideline, nothing much has changed because we don't really get like a Rideline worthy card. Starter must always be Chemdah because it is the only grade 0 Desire Devil out there. And since the Masque Greedon does have the requirement of you having 3 or more Desire Devil cards in the soul, it is not possible for you to run like a different grade 0 and just hope that you can have another Desire Devils to be put into the soul. That's not going to happen. So I recommend you sticking with Chemdah here. I understand there are better grade 0s out there, but just look at Chemdah. He's so cute. Gouman is the great one. He will be in the soul no matter in what stages you are in the game. If you were to superior call cards from the soul, it's most likely you're gonna call Gouman from the soul. So this great one in the soul actually guarantees like a really good target for you to call in order for the whole deck to function. Gouman in the Rideline is quite important, and he is a Desire Devil, so nothing really much you can do about it, and he's basically meant to be played inside Greedon deck. Boshoku basically is like the dead card right now due to, you know, OG Greedon is no longer OG Greedon. He's a mass unit, so he's gonna be played at 1 copy. You don't really get the power bonus after riding into mass, so it's sad, but then again, it does not really matter even if you lost the power. In terms of the Rideline skill, whenever you ride Greedon on top of him, you are basically searching for Saasyou at this moment because Saasyou do get all of the names of the Desire Devils in the soul, which means that he is a viable target for the grade 2 Rideline skill. As for the cards that you want to put into the soul when you ride Greedon on top of Boshoku, 10 out of 11 times you want to put Fuujo into the soul. Fuujo is the one that enables your first attack to have the Battledore, because normally the attack pattern is that your Vanguard is gonna hit first and then your rearguard. So in the OG days where you actually attack with a Vanguard and put everything to the soul is where you start activating Gouman's skill to have Battledore, which means your next 3 attack will have the Battledore effect and not the first Greedon attack. Thanks to Fuujo here, he actually makes the first attack of Greedon a Battledore skill, which is going to be stupid. All 4 attacks are going to be Battledore, keep in mind here. This deck is actually insane. Greedon in this Rideline is, you know, it's pretty much self-explanatory. You can't really put Greedon Masques in the Rideline, so you are going to put Greedon himself into the Rideline. But Greedon doesn't really serve any specific function other than being a cost for the mass superior calling skill. So even if he's in the soul, you can still remove the OG Greedon from the soul and then basically search your top 7 for a Desire Devil, which is going to be really nice for board building as well as, you know, conserve some of your hand. It's just really good. One last thing about the Rideline is that as a general rule, you will always want to go into the mass as soon as possible. There is no reason for you to stay on OG Greedon for 1 turn. There is literally no point. You can't convince me that staying as the OG Greedon is good. Go to the mass as soon as possible and just start building your board, conserving your hand, and just bring the pain to the opponent. That's basically the general rule of this deck. The first card that we're going to talk is Desire Devil Gouman. We are going to run this as max copy because the main rule of this card is basically giving Battledore to your last 3 attacks that you're gonna do. Even if your opponent only needs like a 5k shield to guard a rear guard, they will still need to throw another card in order to successfully guard whatever that is attacking. So this guy here is the main star of the deck. He's run at max copies because he's just that good, and you will definitely want to always see him every time when your turn comes. So this card is simply disgusting. He basically provides Battledore for the second Vanguard swing and your rearguard swings. He's basically a priority unit to be called after your opponent is grade 3. He does have the restriction of checking whether or not if your opponent is grade 3, so do be very careful. Since this card is a Desire Devil, Greedon Masques is able to superior call this card from the top 7, which is definitely super nice. However, one thing to keep in mind is that if you are going first, there's literally no reason for you to keep Gouman in the hand. You can't just shuffle him away because he will come back later. He will come back later. Trust me. Next, of course, is the great one, Dragontree Wretch Demon Sheridder. His main role is basically to generate the Dragontree marker, which in turn will give a 5k to whatever is on that rearguard circle. He's also a food fodder if, of course, you don't really have like any other stuff to put into the soul from Greedon Masques skill. He is a 13k attacker whenever you put him on a Dragontree marker rearguard circle. This deck doesn't really need to hit huge numbers thanks to the Battledore skill. And speaking of Dragontree marker marker, you will only want to put the front row rearguard circle your Dragontree marker. That's it. There's no reason for you to put a Dragontree marker at the back row because most of your back row are just gonna go to soul. There's really no point. Superior calling a grade 1 or below from the soul does help you save some hand as well as recycle Gouman as we talked about. One more thing about this card is that the mass order is able to search for this guy because the mass order actually search for both a mass unit or a Dragontree unit, which this guy is. So it's actually very nice synergy here. The whole mass engine is actually super nice and I really love the whole interaction of the mass engine. It's just that great. And of course, the only other Dragontree unit that we are playing is Dragontree Wretch Chemdah, the grade 2. Similar to Demon Sheridder, he's basically a marker generator, a food fodder attacker, as well as a discard fodder. If you draw into this in the early game, you could just discard him. He does not really do anything until you reach your grade 3 turn. It's only then he's able to help you search your mass order as well as generating Dragontree marker, all that good stuff. So he's okay, I would say, but he is your ticket to get mass order from the deck, which is definitely going to be super nice. Timing of using this guy here is going to be super crucial as well, because whenever you go into your grade 3, your soul will only consist of 3 Desire Devils. So the one card that you put into the soul with Boshoku's skill, the grade 2 Rideline, is going to be super important. If of course you do not have like the mass order in the drop zone, you will definitely want to put anything other than Fuujo, because you are basically forced to call this guy here to search for the order card. Be very smart in terms of what card you are putting for what cost. Just test out the deck. You will start to realize that these little decisions actually dictate if you're able to win a game. I did play this at 2 copies. It just doesn't feel as consistent. That's basically it. Next up, we have Desire Devil Fuujo at max copies. This guy here is from DBT10 and his main role is basically soul fodder, bot snipe, as well as Battledore. So this is basically the one other piece of the puzzle for you to have like a whole turn of Battledore attacks. Like I mentioned before, the first attack that Greedon makes will not have the Battledore if you do not have Fuujo in the soul. I mean, he's still okay because you can't just call him out to snipe something on the board. It's actually not that bad, but still I would much prefer you set him up. But I would much prefer you to set him up as soon as possible in the soul, just so that you have Battledore on your first Greedon attack the future turns. Any extra Fuujo in your hand can be put into the soul and you just snipe the opponent's field, which is definitely nice. And since this guy here is a Desire Devil, once again, Greedon Masques is able to call it. It's just so good. Next, of course, is the more stupid cards that was introduced back in DBT09. This guy here is a board nuke. You are able to put 3 rear guards, no matter if it is yours or your opponent. You can put a total of 3 rear guards into the soul and he just gets 5k for each card put into the soul. This card is basically inside this deck to help you get rid of some cards that are normally very hard to get rid of. Very nice. And I don't think personal right is going to be a problem. Thanks to the whole mass engine, you are basically accelerating your personal right turn. So this guy here is definitely going to be nice. What's more, this card could help you set up your Fuujo into the soul, because this guy could put either your opponent's or your own few into the soul. Yeah, just put Fuujo into the soul and your Vanguard will just say thank you for the Battledore skill. Do try this deck out and pretty sure you're gonna notice it really soon. Next, we have Desire Devil Saasyou, only at 2 copies. This card is the new card that was introduced in DBT11. He is basically an attacker, a defensive shield, as well as a Rideline combo. He is a 15k attacker, as well as a 10k shield and an interceptor, as long as you have 3 Desire Devils in your soul, which you most likely will have most of the time. Unless you soul blast the wrong things out, then that's on you. He's basically a replacement for Boshoku, because RIP Boshoku, this is what you get for being racist. Running more of this could actually help. This card is basically a 10k shield, no matter what. He's also a 15k base as long as you meet the requirements. So if you find yourself like no idea what units to play in this deck, I would suggest adding more of this card. If this card is on a Dragontree marker, he's a 20k attacker, which is a 10k shield. On top of that, if this card has Battledore, yeah, it's gonna be more than 10k shield. This card is pretty much straightforward, nothing really much to talk about, but he played a significant role, I would say. Next, of course, is the golden brick of the deck. I mean, not necessarily a brick. He is quite essentially the best card to be discarded from your hand to right. This is basically your main way for you to go straight into mass like any other mass deck. But in this deck, it is absolute important for you to set up your whole mass order in the drop zone, as well as having the Greedon Masque in your hand to ride. Even if you do not get the personal ride, it's still fine. OG Greedon needs another OG Greedon in the soul for you to get the 7 damage. Greedon Masques does not need that. You ride on top of him, 7 damage, there you go. That's it. Whenever you go to OG Greedon, ride the Masque form as soon as possible. Even if you do not have personal ride, it still works. I'm telling you. I don't really recommend you to run more than 2 of this card because it's basically a balance between either you want to run more of this or you want to run more of the Dragontree stuff. It's basically up to you. This card here is going to be stupid, both in skill synergy as well as in price. The price is just going to get even higher because, you know, Orpheus Masque is a thing. Last but not least is the boss unit for the stack OG Greedon and Greedon Masques. They are just incredible. While yes, Greedon Masques is technically a nerf from the OG Greedon due to only restricted to once per turn as well as gaining a 5k as opposed to being able to restand a lot of times and get a 15k if you have a 10 soul, but I feel like the once per turn is justified. I am not really a huge fan of multiple OG Greedon attack because for that setup to work, you will need to have like specific cards in your hand and as much counterblast as possible, as well as the correct rear guards to be put to soul and at least 10 soul in order to pull the multiple Greedon attack. I personally don't like that and I prefer this build. Not only is it easy to set up, it's also more consistent. How often do you pull off the multiple Greedon attacks every single game versus this kind of setup? Yeah, I take this kind of setup every time. So as I said, the first attack of this guy here is not gonna have the Battledore if you don't activate Fuujo. So Fuujo plays a very important role. This guy here is the king of Battledore for a reason, and that reason is being these 2 cards. And once again, you are filtering this deck like crazy thanks to Greedon Masques checking the top 7 to get 1 Desire Devil, as well as the Masque order checking top 5 to get either Masque or Dragontree. The grade 2 Dragontree searching for the Masque. You are filtering this deck like crazy. This deck dry checking a triggers is unsurprising. I do check into double criticals consistently. I'm telling you, that is so disgusting. The OG Greedon himself is just gonna be like a throwaway card. You want him to be in the drop zone at all times. The only cards that you don't want to throw is Greedon Masques because personal right is personal right. Who doesn't love it? This card, amazing. Love it. This is my new favorite deck, this deck. And that is all for this video. Do let me know down in the comment section of what do you think of Greedon Masques. I am in love with this deck. You will need to try this deck out yourself. Despite this deck not running a multiple Greedon attack, just try it. Give it a try and just let me know what you guys think. Do like and subscribe if you like this video, and of course during the bell notification icon so that you don't miss a video I upload. With that being said, I'll see you all on the field.
Even when you feel low, you can still go. Even when you feel slow, you can still go. Even when there's no hope, you can still go. I never answer to no, man, I still go.